And so as we begin, we've got a great panel for you to observe the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Our moderator will be Craig Nelson, a noted author of many books, including Pearl Harbor, From Infamy to Greatness. Please welcome Craig Nelson.
So I hope everyone can hear me. Before I begin, I want to say how I am practically crawling on the floor with honor at being here with these men. Can we have some welcome for these men who survived one of the most historic moments? Thank you so much for being here. What we're going to try and do today is sort of take you through the human side of what happened at Pearl Harbor. And it began at the very north of Oahu because the Japanese flotilla, the Kido Butai, anchored 200 miles north of Oahu. So the first thing that happened was it was seen by Army radar units on the north shore of Oahu. And one of the men here, Richard Shimmel, was working in that unit. And he has a great quote. He said, "It seemed that if you got in trouble in the Army, a radar unit was most likely in your future." I thought that was a wonderful quote. Anyway, can you tell us what happened when the planes came in and Joe McDonald was involved with that?
Well, it was pretty early in the morning, and Joe McDonald got a call. He had relieved me watching at the information center. What we do at nighttime, if we didn't have the radars working, we would stay over. We had multiple jobs. We would either be switchboard operators. We had to take care of the information center. If anything would arise, we'd try and plot them out, find out where they were coming from. On this day, excuse me, Joe McDonald got a call from one of our radar units that they had seen a large number of planes coming towards Honolulu or towards the Hawaiian Islands. And as he did that, he took the information that he'd written down and he took it into the lieutenant, who was a pretty young man, and he was in charge of the duty that night. His words were gold. Whatever he said had to go. Well, he didn't think there was anything to worry about. He said, because we had planes coming in from California. But had he realized that these planes were coming from the east, and the planes from the United States were coming from the west, he should have looked into it, but he figured, no, we just let it go. So then they called him back twice, and he still said the same thing. So as you know, when you're in the service, whatever an officer says to you, you do it. So they forgot about it, and it was maybe 20 minutes later is when the bombs started dropping.
So our next man, you're from coal country in Pennsylvania, right?
Allentown, yes. Pennsylvania.
Yes. And our next veteran is Mr. Calderone, who's from Ohio, yes? And Mr. Calderone was aboard the Weavy, the West Virginia, and he was part of the ship's band, and his battle station was to help counter flood. Right, and so the Pearl Harbor was very shallow, and the Oklahoma had flipped over, and Mr. Calderone was set down to help counter flood so the Weavy wouldn't flip over. And can you tell us what happened next?
Well, first of all, I want to welcome the military. It's just such an honor to be talking to the academies, the people in the schools, and I salute you. But what this gentleman said about that transmission was true. I wish we would have paid attention to it. Things could have been a little bit different, but that's not what I was talking about. I'm talking about the West Virginia, who took 8 torpedoes, 9 bombs, and one 14-inch shell hit the number 3 turret, but didn't explode. Would have been Arizona too. And so as one person asked me, I think from the newspaper, I was 5 minutes to 8, waiting to go into a drill, and wham, it hit the ship that shook like that, and that's 32,000 tons. Then another one followed quickly. But the West Virginia was 28 inches angle to go over. The only thing that kept us from going over was the Tennessee. We were up against our side there. So then my battle station was gone. The telephone was all destroyed. So they decided to go down and counter flood. Well, I'm alone. I said, can I join? And the lieutenant looked at me and says, yes. I said, maybe we'll find another phone. must have been a dummy. But anyway, we went down there, and I noticed as they were working, and I'm looking for a jack or something to make communication with Central. They were wiped out. Everything was wiped out in the middle of the ship. And I happened to look up in the air, and I saw water coming out like a hose, you know, through the seals. I said, wow, maybe it's flooded on the top and we're here. So as the ship started to lay back down, the water started to come up. So we get up like this, and we all held hands, so we wouldn't get lost. And we're sitting there trying to figure out how we're going to get out of here. And all I thought about was my mother. How's she going to handle this? It's a strange thing, but there was a calmness. We were excited naturally. So one fellow held my hand. He squeezed my hand so hard he almost broke my hand, you know. But finally, a voice in the darkness. Remember, it's dark now. He says, we dug the next compartment. There's a chute there, and if it's dry, we can go up the chute and maybe we can make it. And everybody said, let's do it. But he did say this: if it's flooded, if the compartment is flooded, then we're all dead. Then we were trained to go underwater, 3 deep breaths, to fill your lungs up with air. Then that will hold you for about 30 seconds. All depends on your condition. And then when that's gone, you let the air out. You have another 10 seconds. After that, you die. And so this is what we're looking at, and this guy's going, you know, opening that door, and we're all standing on our toes, you know, and frightened, very frightened. So finally, they opened the door, and the water changed about like this. So we just kind of danced over into the compartment, held up like this with our hands.
Would you like to talk about
and then
Midway?
We
Talk about Midway.
took those breaths,
I'd like to
and
talk
they went
about
under,
Midway, and just
they
mention
called
that I went
themselves.
to Guadalcanal and just briefly went to Europe.
Okay. Sorry.
They crawled up sideways. I don't know how we got out of there. Anyway,
Participated
so
in 2 theaters, and that's what it was.
you want to finish this?
I do actually.
Anyway, as we were going up, I'm holding my breath, and I'm kicking the guy below me, and the guy up there is helping me. We're pulling each other out. So I let that air go, and I figured I'm going to die, and I'm a little bit frightened. So finally, I'm going, and I can't go anymore. You have to open your mouth. You're very close to drowning. You have to open your mouth. When I opened my mouth, it was air and water and oil. And we got up out of the compartment, and we pulled the rest of the guys out. Now, when we got out of there, I don't know how we got out. I thought about it for years. It still bothers me. And I can't stand in a closet. You put me in a closet, I'll tear the door down. And that's one thing that happened before I could climb hills. But so we just laid down exhausted. There was nothing left. We gave it all. And I'll never forget, there's one fellow that I kind of knew. And I looked at him, he looked at me, he touched my face, and I touched his face. We were brothers. And, excuse me.
Thank you so much.
Excuse me. Anyway, so then everybody got up and left. And I've been spending 75 years to try to find somebody that was there.
Yeah, I
And to this day, personally, I think I know what happened. I can't say. But it was so, I went on the ship after repairing it and talked to the boatswain mate. He was a boatswain mate. They run the ship. And I talked to all these people trying to find out who this person was, because I was going to go through the politics to make sure that this man got the Medal of Honor. He saved my life, whoever he was. And I carried that in my heart, and I carried that everybody else. Then everybody just disappeared. And then So finally I got up and they said abandon ship. And about that time something else hit and I got hit in the face. I said, my God, I can't win, you know. So anyway, we got to the end of the boat, of the ship rather, and this is a story my son loves. He calls it the shoe story. When he was a little kid, he said, Dad, tell the shoe story. When I was on the deck, this is the forecastle deck, I looked down, all the shoes that the guy jumped in the water are all lined up in perfect order. So I took my shoes off and I put them right next to him. That's the discipline. And then I jumped in the water and the guy hollered, hey, he's wounded. So they pulled on a rope and pulled me in, took me across the channel. I'm looking for airplanes. They were leaving, just leaving then. And then they put us in a truck and took us to the hospital. Let me tell you something. The people laying on that road was burned, absolutely burned. And so they operated. They took the piece out, and he said the bone here saved it from going any deeper. And they patched it up. And he says, oh, by the way, you won a Purple Heart. I says, give it to those guys. They deserve it.
Cell phone. Can you turn it off?
So I want to get back to my ship. But this was the most horrible thing in my life that I did on the ship. And then in the afternoon, we went back and we fought the fires for 2.5 days. They wanted volunteers. Naive, you know.
Do you have a cell phone?
I said, yes.
Do you have a cell
Another
phone
guy.
with you?
Another
Cell
guy
phone.
did too. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're having interference with cell phones. So if any of on the panel have a cell phone, if you could turn it off. Thank you. And also, I do want to point out there is one story that you missed, and I'm going to tell it. And that is the fact that all of you know the horrible devastation that happened aboard the Arizona, where a strike killed the biggest number of men. A single explosion killed the biggest number of men in military history until Hiroshima. So that explosion happened because a bomb penetrated the ammunition deck, and you helped keep that from happening aboard your ship. And I want to tell you, this is my favorite quote of yours. The bravest thing I saw was there was a big hole in the center of the ship, and they had a guy lowered down by a rope. They squirted water on him to keep him from being cooked. They handed him a hose, and he put that on the unexploded live ammunition. That's the kind of men we had, okay? I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting. I have to move on. Thank you, Mr. Calderone, so much.
I tell the story about the Arizona.
Well, I have to go, we have to go on to, we have to let the next person go, who is, and here I am doing this.
Took up my time, so I don't have to.
You were next, Mr. Leavelle. Mr. Leavelle is a fellow Texan, and you served on a tender, yes? Can you tell us about that morning?
I didn't catch all you said there.
I said, you're a fellow Texan with me, and you served on a tender, yes?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what happened to you December 7th?
Well, I can try, but he took up too much of my time. I don't think I want But anyway, unfortunately, I don't have a heroic story to tell you. I didn't kill any Japanese or anything. In fact, they didn't even shoot at me while I was over there. Our tender was anchored about 1.5 miles away from Ford Island. Consequently, we was out of the line of fire when the bombers came over. They passed by us, and one or two might have circled around our way, but we didn't get hit, and nobody was hurt on my ship. And I feel bad about that, not being able to tell about being wounded. I saw those little girls here yesterday talking about one girl had 2 shots in her shoulder. She could have gave me one of those, and then I'd have been able to talk about being hit. But I didn't get that. So, but nobody on my ship got hurt. We were anchored out, like I say, out. And the next morning, we up anchored and moved up into Ford Island and tied up next to one of the ships that was badly damaged and run power over to them so they could correct all of their problems that they had. And then we moved on to another one. So that's about the end of that as far as
Thank you, sir. And finally, I'd like to introduce a man with one of the most incredible military records you've ever heard. He served in 2 theaters. He fought both the Nazis and the Japanese, Mr. Jack Holder.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I was a flight engineer in a PBY crew based on Fort Allen, December the 7th. I had the duty that day. My section had just fell in for muster. When the section leader began roll call, we heard a screaming aircraft, and moments later a terrible explosion. We thought one of our own aircraft had crashed. We ran outside. The hangar beside us, VP-21's hangar, was engulfed in smoke and flame. We then seen aircraft circling with their rising sun insignia. We immediately knew what happened. Everything went through our mind, anger, fear, whatever. It so happened that one of my shipmates remembered there was a sewer line behind our hangar under construction. He says, let's go for the ditch, follow me. We all ran, jumped in the ditch. One of the pilots seen us, strafed the ditch, hit the dirt piled up beside the ditch, missing us by 3 feet, I guess. I've been asked 1,000 times, I guess, what my thoughts were that time as we sat there clinging to each other. I guess my most vivid memory is, God, please don't let me die in this ditch. I don't know how long we were there. This was a 2-wave affair, you know. The first wave was 187 aircraft. The second wave arrived an hour and 15 minutes later, 167 aircraft. I was directed immediately to go into the hangar to help ready the commanding officer's aircraft for flight. It was in the hangar undergoing a 30-hour check. We installed new spark plugs, rolled it out. The plane was refueled, loaded with 2 1,000-pound bombs. The captain and his crew flew for 19 hours looking for the Japanese fleet, but found nothing. Later in the day, machine gun pits constructed with sandbags were constructed all around Fort Allen. 2 shipmates and I had the pleasure of manning one of these for 3 days and nights, dining on bologna sandwiches, drinking coffee, fighting mosquitoes, and wondering where the Japanese forces were. Every noise we heard, every ship noise or every aircraft noise, we knew that they were coming back. Fortunately, that didn't happen. On the 4th day, we returned to the barracks. All lockers had been broken open to retrieve white clothing for bandages, and at that time we received a postcard with 2 inscribed inscriptions which read, the first one says, I've been wounded. The second one says, I'm okay, don't worry. My mother received this card 11 days later. I went to the Battle of Midway, May the 26th, 1942. I was in the 2nd PBY to spot the Japanese fleet approaching Midway. Just briefly, I'll give you what happened in Midway. For the first 2 hours, we were definitely losing the battle. The Marines on Midway had airborne 27 Brewster Buffalo fighters. Only 7 of those returned, and they were then unflyable. In addition, our torpedo fleet was completely annihilated. The Hornet launched 30 torpedo planes, only 1 man returned, Ensign Gay. They then launched 15 more, and only 4 of those returned. 45 aircraft, we lost 40. But this is the time when the tide was about to turn. We had airborne 3 squadrons of dive bombers led by Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey. They've been airborne 2 hours, running low on fuel. but he says we're going to press on just a little longer. Moments later, he seen the white wake of a fast-moving Japanese destroyer. He says that ship has to be racing to join the main fleet. We'll follow it. And just moments later, they found 3 aircraft carriers diving from 20,000 feet. In 4 minutes, they sunk 3 carriers. Later in the day, Admiral Spruance called Admiral Nimitz. He says, "Admiral, we've had a great day. We've just sunk 3 carriers. Do you think that's enough?" He said, "Hell no, I want the 4th one." The Hero, which was found later that day, was also sunk. I flew 13 hours that day, manned with 4 500-pound bombs. Late in the day, we caught a Japanese sub, surfaced, unmanned, all hatches were closed. We dropped the first bomb on the fantail, dropped the second bomb behind the conning tower, made 6 circles of watching it sink. We had a great day. Late in the afternoon, we had lost all contact with Midway. We didn't know if we held the island or the Japanese had it. We had a decision to make. We could go back, take a chance on going back to Midway, or sit down at sea. We dropped our 2 remaining bombs, sat down at sea, drifted all night. I took a sleeping bag, climbed on top of the wing, tied myself to an antenna, and spent the night. Sun up the next morning, we finally made radio contact with Midway. We learned we had been successful. We took navigational sunshots. We also told that there was a destroyer at the French frigate Shoals loaded with aviation fuel. We found our position, flew to the Shoals, refueled, went to Midway. Returned to Hawaii, had 5 glorious days at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, but that was short-lived. 2 months later, I was in Noumea, New Caledonia, flying patrol over Guadalcanal and all the Solomon Islands. Spent 7 months there, received orders to transfer to San Diego, supposedly to help commission a new PBOI squadron, and returned to the Pacific. When I reached San Diego, my orders have been changed. I started training the B-24 Liberator. 2 months later, I was in Argentia, Newfoundland for additional 2 months. And in April of '43, I was in Dunksville, Devonshire, England, where I spent 15 months. I flew 56 missions of anti-submarine patrol over the English Channel and the Bay of Biscay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So as you gentlemen can see, the audience is filled with bright, shiny, young faces, and I'm going to ask you to sum up what you would like to tell them just starting their careers in the service. What I'd like to tell you is that I called this book From Infamy to Greatness because Pearl Harbor was the worst loss in American military history. In about an hour and a half, we lost 2,403 Americans. Most of them were between the ages of 16 and 19. They had no idea this was coming. They were out of power. They were completely sitting ducks. One of them said, "I didn't even know they were sore at us." But that horrible tragedy is what led to the reason America has the incredible military we have today. So you can actually watch the birth of American power in the world today from the story of these men here. So, Mr. Holder, is there something you'd like to say as farewell?
Well, first of all, you touched on a wonderful subject there, Craig. What these young men, I've made presentations all over Arizona, in fact, all over the country, and these young men, I'm so proud of them. They need to stay in school, get all the education they can. Education was not that necessary when I was a young man. I grew up in a small 4-room shack with gasoline was 15 cents, but a lot of people didn't have 15 cents. We had no electricity, no running water, no toilet. When I reached Hawaii, my father was a farmer, and I walked 1.5 miles to school. We had no telephone. When I started high school, I was transported 7 miles in a green 1927 Model A Ford truck with wooden benches down each side for seats. The sides of it were covered with canvas curtains, and you could imagine how damn cold it was in the wintertime. I soon learned that farming was not going to consume my life. It was a glorious day when I got to Hawaii.
Mr. Shimmel?
Well, I believe right now we are the most intelligent people in the world. All these young men and women who are in the service, we really honor you and think you people are going to be the future for us. In our day, we had mostly farmers, people who couldn't get a job. Myself, by the time I was 18, I lived in 8 different homes, went to 8 different schools. So when I enlisted in the service and became an Army man, I think I learned more there than anything else. And I can see these proud people that are sitting here right now are in the military service. I commend you, and I thank you very much.
And Mr. Leavelle?
Well, I don't know what I can add to what they have said. I think that all of these people have done a great job, and they need the appreciation and so forth. But I didn't do anything extra with other than like our ship stayed around the harbor there and helped other ships get in back running so they could take care of themselves. We had full power, so we could help them with that. But outside of that, my life's been pretty dull. So after I got out, I come back to Texas and ended up on the police department and worked with them 26 years, and then I did some extra work along the way. And outside of that, I just lived to be 96 years old, and I don't know why I'm here, so I guess.
Well, you were almost killed a second time in Dallas, I believe. Is that correct?
Do what?
Were you almost killed a second time in Dallas? Do I have that story wrong?
Well, yeah, what he's referring to, when President Kennedy was shot, I happened to be the one that fell heir to Lee Harvey Oswald, the prisoner that shot him, and interviewed him. And then when we had so many threats that they're going to take him away from us and so forth, we decided to move him down to the county jail for safekeeping. But when I got ready to move him, I told him, I said, Lee, if anybody shoots at you, I hope they're as good a shot as you are. Not me. He kind of laughed and he said, well, nobody's going to shoot at me. But that was kind of the wrong answer for that question, and it told me what I'd already figured out. He was doing what he was doing for publicity and trying to make a name for himself. Well, he did, but he didn't live long enough to enjoy it. And as I walked into the basement with him, I could see Jack Ruby in the crowd. He had got in through a break in security for about 10, 20 seconds. And he had the pistol down by his side here. And all of those reporters and police officers were standing all around. None of them saw that. But as soon as I walked in the door, I saw it. And I tried to make a move on him. And he stepped toward me. And I grabbed him by the shoulder, but he fired that one shot that hit Oliver in the stomach. But his finger was still working on the trigger, trying to get off another shot, when my partner on the other side grabbed that cylinder on the pistol with his right hand and his wrist with the other. And if my partner hadn't grabbed that, he'd have got off one more shot and probably 2. And if he'd have got off 1 or 2 shots, both of them would have caught me right along in here somewhere. So I owe my life to my partner for that day. And we, when I got him out and got him to Parkland to be looked at on the way out, I was riding in the back of the ambulance with him and trying to get a pulse on him, but I never could get one. And about halfway out there, he moved and groaned a little bit and then went completely limp, and I've always thought that that's when he passed. But the doctors out there did not pronounce him dead until 1 o'clock or 1:05, I believe. So when I wheeled him into the operating room, the doctors were all standing by because they'd been notified. And what the bullet had done, it hit him, he hit Lee about 3 or 4 inches to the left of the navel, went through the stomach and cut the vena cava in the back, come on through and it took a chunk out of the liver, hit another main artery over here on the right side, and then hit the end of the 7th rib, which devoted it again, and it come back to the front, and it ended up about 3 or 4 inches to the right of the navel, so it just made a circle. And when I examined him, the bullet was pushing on the skin so tight that I could take it and roll it around just like that with my thumb and finger underneath the skin. So when I got to Parkland with him, doctors grabbed him and started to work on him. I told him, I said, I want that bullet out of him before you do anything else. So he pinched it up and hit it with a knife, and it popped out. And then I took a pocket knife out and gave it to the nurse standing there and had her put her initial in the butt end of that bullet. And I said, you and I, somewhere down the line, are going to be testifying that this is a bullet that came out of Oswald. And we did. I testified 2 or 3 times, and I know that she did at least once on it. But that's about the end game. Of course, there's a lot more investigation went into it, but
Okay,
that's the main thing that happened to him.
great. And Mr. Calderone, for you to sum up.
I like to say that there were 16 million service people in World War II, women and men. They paid for the peace. We paid to keep it, the peace to be free. And I feel in my heart that about every 20 years we have to pay that price. Freedom is not free. There's always somebody that's going to try to take it away from you. And with the people that we have in the service and academies and the Army, the Navy, whatever it is, they are paying the price. Those people in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's a different type of war, but there's still bullets coming right for your head. So we have to protect it. And I have one thing that I will say, I think the worst thing this country could have ever done is get rid of the draft. If we would have had the draft, that's not my thinking, it's the people that know about this, they never would have invaded South Korea because we broke up all that powerful service we had. Can you imagine, you saw those carriers, those models, can you imagine 100 carriers turn in the wind and launch 1,000 planes? That's how powerful we were. But today, we have many enemies. And in the United States has to be strong. These people will be admirals and generals and whatever the case may be. They will be our leaders. We have to support them. And when they come home, we have to support them. That's what I feel deep in my heart. That's what we did. At the time, we didn't think so. We just want to kill them. But this is the way it is. If you want to be free, if sometime it could happen, you won't be free. That Constitution, I think, is in a building across the street. Read that. Get the little word. Read it. It's the greatest thing that's ever been done for this country. And I love it, and I know you love it. Thank you very much, and God bless you, USA. Between Texas Union and I, we do pretty good.
We can have questions now. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand, and Colonel Toomey or I will get the microphone to you. But first, gentlemen, my father was also an 18-year-old German immigrant kid in Pearl Harbor and was on the USS Raleigh and stayed in the Navy for the remainder of the war. Questions?
Address somebody in particular?
Yeah, no.
Cadet Thomas from United States Military Academy. And this is questions for Mr. Shimmel here, sir. Even given the early warning detection, do you feel that the United States could have adequately repelled the Japanese assault that was coming?
I didn't get that.
Even with the early warning detection, you said that the lieutenant was briefed on it about maybe 20 minutes prior to the first plane hitting. Do you believe that the United States could have still successfully repelled the attack?
Well, if we would have had any kind of warning, the ships would have been ready. Everybody would have been ready to fight back. They might have made some damage, but they wouldn't have made the damage they did do. I mean, because I know the fighter pilots that did get up, I met the two of them, and I think between the two of them, they shot down 7, and they got up during the raid. But if we had at least 20 minutes more to get more airplanes up, I think it would have been a nice dogfight, and we wouldn't have had the damage that we did have.
Cadet Hightower, United States Air Force Academy. Mr. Calderone, you mentioned the guy that you said helped save your life. Did you ever find out who that was?
I can't hear him. What did he say?
The guy you said that
I can't hear it either.
saved your life.
Speak louder, I can't.
The man that
Mr.
saved
Calderone.
your life.
The man that saved your life, did you ever find out who that was?
No. I'm still looking for him.
Just to follow up on your question, they would have only had 1 hour of warning, but 1 hour is better than 0 hour warning. So,
Yes, my name is Norman Fulkerson. I'm with Tradition Family and Property. My question is for you, Mr. Calderone. Can you hear me?
No, not here now.
Okay. The question is, you said you would be in favor of reopening the draft, and I agree completely with you. But our military, the world has changed very much since you served. And basically, I would ask a question on behalf of my niece, blonde-haired, blue-eyed sweetheart from Kentucky, who is looking to get married and be a mother. Would you favor the drafting of women?
Well, the world has changed. Right now, we have fighter pilots that are female. We have captains of ships that are female. And personally, I don't know how I would react, but I'll tell you this. When I was wounded, when I was in the hospital, I always refer to the ladies and men of Pearl Harbor. What they did was just amazing, what they were doing. You just sit there with your mouth open. So it's a hard question, but I do know this. We have them in submarines. I don't know about submarines. We do have them on ships, and people want them to go in combat. That's something that people have to think about. But the point is this, the draft is so important. In Israel, everybody's drafted. Switzerland, everybody's drafted. They haven't had a war in 200 years. So where are we? But Theodore Roosevelt, he was a great president. Speak softly with a big stick.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Morning.
My name is Cadet. Mic working?
no, speak up.
Okay. My name is Cadet Pendleton from Bowling Green State University. My question's for Mr. Leavelle. What was it like interrogating Oswald after the assassination?
What was it like?
What was it?
What was it like talking to Oswald before the assassination? What was it like talking to Oswald? You talked to him, didn't you?
Oh, well, did they ask me a question?
Yeah.
That's a question, yeah.
Well, surprised me, I couldn't hear him, so. You know what he said?
He said, what did Oswald say to you? Did he say anything to you?
Oh, yeah, he talked with me, I talked with him. I was the first one to get him because I was questioning him about the murder of the officer J.D. Tippit. And at the time I was talking to him, I did not know that he was going to be a suspect in the presidential shooting. And so when I talked, he answered. He was very nice to me and polite and answered my question. Of course, he didn't answer them truthfully. But when I asked him about shooting the police officer, his answer was, "I haven't shot anybody." Well, that was the wrong answer. That clicked in my head because that's not what he should have said. Because I'd worked 2 other officers' murders, and when you talk to them, ask them about that, then you just say, "I didn't shoot the policeman," or "I didn't shoot the cop." But he come out with, "I haven't shot anybody." But as soon as I found out that he's going to be charged with the presidential shooting, I knew why he said that. He's getting his denial in early. He knew we was going to stick it on him later, and he's getting his denial in early that he hadn't shot anybody. And he made another mistake in that time when I was talking to him about anybody shooting him, and he kind of laughed and said, "Nobody's going to shoot at me." That was a wrong answer too. But, well, that was proven pretty quickly afterwards. But what happened was I complimented him on his shooting, being a good shot, and that's what he was looking for, was for praise or something on whatever he done. And he, like Ruby, was wanting to get publicity for himself. He didn't have any other. I know the powers that be put out the word that Texas hated Kennedy. I guess I interviewed 200 people, and I made it a point to ask nearly every one of them, what did you think of Kennedy? Did you? Oh, I thought he was like, I didn't vote for him maybe, but I said, did you hate him? Because that's what was put out by the Congress up here, people, that he was hated there. Not a one of them. Well, I'll take it back. There was one told me that he hated him because of I kind of forgot now what it was when he did something for the black people down in the country. They helped them out of rule for them and something. He thought that was it, but I come to find out later on that his wife had run off with a black man, so that's why he hated him. But not a single one out of all of them that I asked told me that they hated Kennedy. But a lot of them said they didn't vote for him for one reason or the other, but they didn't. It wasn't because they hated him. And I think there was a lot of misinformation made, and it's quite evident that he was lacked because the crowds everywhere he went, he had hundreds up to thousands gathered, and wherever he stopped in Texas to make a talk. And his director of security, they had chosen 3 different routes for him to go to the trademark for the luncheon, and he chose the one downtown, where it went right down through the business at noontime. So his head man told him, he said, "Mr. President, we cannot protect you or secure those buildings. There's too many of them." And his answer to his head of security was, if anybody wants to shoot the president, all they got to do is get on top of one of those high buildings with a high-powered rifle and pick him off, and there won't be anything you can do about it. Well, he wasn't just talking about himself, he was just talking in general. And of course, it was true. And it was proven pretty well in just a short time afterwards. And there's been a lot of misinformation along that about all of the shooting. Oswald shot 3 times. one of them, two of them hit, one of them missed. And but that stray bullet done everything from knock the street light out up here to hit on a curb over there and splinter and all sorts of things. It's been you'd be surprised at how many different directions that missed shot went. But they had evidence. I didn't look into it, but the FBI, the Secret Service, looked into it, and there was a hole in the inside of the limousine indicating that it probably hit inside and splattered. So I have one man standing on the far side over there on Main Street, and he ended up with a little chip on his blood spot. As he told me, it was about the size of head of a straight pin. And Deputy Sheriff come along there and saw it, and he asked him about it. He said he rubbed it off, and he didn't even know it was there. He didn't know how he got it. Well, this Deputy Sheriff, looking for a little publicity, he found a notch on the curb. He said that extra bullet hit that and splintered, and so this man wanting publicity, he claimed, well, all right, that's what happened. So he got in on a lot of publicity. But when I talked to him, he told me, he said, I don't have a clue as to when that hit or where it come from. But he rode the wagon for publicity, and like a lot of people did. But that was not unusual. But after all of that was over, we got behind. My captain asked me to do some work on all these assertions was made, and I spent 5 or 6 months running those out, and I busted out every one of them. I'll just tell you of a couple because I had dozens of them, but I'll tell you a couple. First place, I was trying to find some innocent individual, or some honest individual rather, that I could talk to. Well, here stepped up a lawyer, and he wrote a 3-page letter to J. Edgar Hoover. And in that letter, he told him that he and his girlfriend went down to the Carousel Club a couple of months early and sat down at a table, and Lee Harvey Oswald come in and sit down on the other side. It's surprising how many people recognized Harvey when he was so obnoxious, really, on everything. But he said that Ruby come over and sat down with him, told me he ought to be here, and they talked about killing somebody. But this lawyer had such a great memory. He had every word that Ruby asked Oswald, his answer, and everything Oswald asked Ruby. He had remembered that whole conversation. Amazing. Well, of course, when J. Edgar Hoover got it, why, on the bottom of his letter, he said, I don't want no publicity. I'm just doing this to be a good citizen. And, of course, J. Edgar sent it right back down to us and the FBI, and we got it. And so when I was trying to knock out that, I was looking for somebody, and I said, well, what about a lawyer? He's supposed to be honest. Well, I won't comment any further on that, but anyhow, he come in with that, and I complimented him on it, and I said, but there's one thing I need to know here, and I said, did anybody else hear that? Because if I take this into the court, and they're going to ask me if I had it verified anyway. So I said, I need somebody else to verify it. And he said, well, he didn't know of anybody else. I said, well, how about that girlfriend? I'll use her. And he said, well, we and her broke up, and I don't know where she is. Well, I didn't have time to look for her, so I asked our intelligence division to look for her. And after about 2 weeks, they found her and brought her in. And she made a sworn affidavit. She remembered the date. And she said, not only did we not see Ruby, we didn't go to the Carousel Club. Mm-hmm. Now, this is going to get some of the women here. But she said she was $100 a night hooker, and they spent the night in a hotel. Now, if you women don't understand what that hooker is, and your husband or boyfriend sitting there with you can't tell you, see me after the deal, and I'll explain it to you.
We need to finish, Mr. Leavelle. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I want to say, gentlemen, you always had my...
Let me finish that out.
All right.
I asked him then to take a polygraph test, like I said, if you pass a polygraph test, that'll balance what you said. And as soon as I put that down, you never saw a man get sick so fast in your life. He had all kinds of aches and pains. He couldn't take a polygraph test, and he didn't take it. But he also admitted that he made that whole letter up. That ain't the only one. That's just one I want to tell you.
Okay. All right. So I just want to say, gentlemen, you always had my respect and my thanks, and now to see you in person has just doubled and tripled that. And thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was such an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I was so thrilled to do this. You were just fantastic. You guys are tremendous.
Thank you very much,
you
Craig,
so much.
and gentlemen of the panel. We have an additional Pearl Harbor veteran who just arrived a few minutes ago. Unfortunately, we can't get him down here. I think he's in the back row. First Sergeant Edward Davis, U.S. Army veteran who was stationed at Schofield Barracks, adjacent to Wheeler Field when it came under attack. I think he's in the back. Did anybody see him? Over here, Jim. Okay. Welcome, sir. Thank you for your service. I should mention about something about Mr. Leavelle. He was in one of the most famous photographs in all of photographic history. It's that photograph where he's handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald, and they're transferring him to another cell. And Ruby sticks the gun out, as you've probably seen that photo. And Mr. Leavelle is the gentleman in the tan suit with the cowboy hat. And we'll put that photo on the screen here a little later on in the day to show it to you. But I was privileged to visit the Texas School Book Depository, where from which Oswald shot the president. I was down there a year ago, and there's a museum there now. And that tan suit is in a case. And he told me that sometime after the shooting, a call came in from I guess a antiques collector or something like that, and offered his wife, I think, $75,000 for the suit. This is many years ago, and she declined. And he said, "I just wish I'd taken the call." So, but a real. Actually, 4 gentlemen here who really walk with history and help make history. So we thank you all for being here. God bless. Thank you for your service.